There have only been 3 times where a single piece of information has completely changed my life. 1, getting some juicy dirt on a high-ranking US congressman. 2, finding out that coconut aminos are a very suitable replacement for soy sauce. And 3, what I'm going to share with you right now. This piece of information, way even juicier than that precious blackmail that I got on that high-ranking US congressman or woman. Not saying what. Guess what? 1 finger. What if I told you you could play every single chord you'd ever need to know with just 1 finger on a guitar? It's true. True story. We're going to start right here, okay? People's key. Key of G. There are 7 notes in the key of G. There are 6 main chords. G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor. Nobody really plays F sharp half diminished. But those 6 main chords you can play with a single finger. All right, so we're gonna start right here. The 5th fret. We're just gonna take your pointer finger. You know, it could be whatever finger you want. Pointer finger is generally gonna be the one we're gonna use because there's a special bonus tip at the end of this video. Wait for it. 5th fret on the highest 3 strings, minor chord, right? This is kind of like a replacement you could think of for an A minor bar chord like this. Like if this is your soy sauce, this right here are those tasty coconut aminos, you know what I'm saying? So, A minor, all right, is gonna be the 2nd chord in the key of G. Now we can move this to play all the minor chords. A minor, B minor, 5th fret, 7th fret. The other chord is gonna be E minor, 12th fret, or just open, right? So you can kind of be like, all right, all these notes make chords, E minor, A minor, B minor, E minor again. You could kind of keep going on and do like the higher octaves of A minor or B minor. But again, any minor chord can be played right here. Much more simple than this. But aside going just to this shape as a go-to shape, you can use the individual notes that come from these shapes, specifically the ones that are right next to each other, right? So A minor, B minor. We can take this and make a little scale out of it. Right, so before maybe if you saw something that was like, all right, A minor to B minor, you know, maybe that's like, those seem like different shapes, right? Well, maybe just kind of like, you can kind of like inflect, and then kind of just make little individual notes and runs between them. We're gonna go into more depth with that, but just always know that in any key, the spacing between these chords is always gonna be the same. The 2nd chord and the 3rd chord are gonna be right here, right next to each other. And then you can think of this as, if you wanna do it in fret numbers, the 7th fret to the 12th fret, you can just think of adding 5 frets, and that'll get you in any key, right? Let's say we're in the prettiest key, the key of A. You would just be here, here, and then here, right? But those are just the minor chords. We said that we were gonna do all the chords in the key of G. So you may already know where this is going. This same exact shape just moved a string lower is gonna give you the major chords. All right, so here's A minor, 5G, 5B, 5E. Well, if I move this to 5D, 5G, and 5B, then it's kind of like the bottom part of like a C major chord, right? So this is how we're gonna play a C major chord, otherwise known as the 4 chord, G, A, B, C, in the key of G. So here's A minor to C major. Now again, this is gonna work in other keys besides just the key of G, which we're gonna get to in a second, but the same exact thing is gonna happen over every spot that you already played, all right? So remember, there are 3 major chords, G major, C major, D major in this key. Here's C, and here's D. Everything's just a whole step higher, right? Just like the difference between A minor and B minor, same is true between C major and D major, which now you can kind of extend that little scale that we just made from there, right? Because we just know basically the entirety of the 5th fret and the 7th fret are all fair game for what we're doing, okay? Same thing with that other minor chord, right? Remember that 12th fret E minor goes to G major, right? So, or, okay? So this is just kind of like almost like a cheat code that you can use to connect any of the 6 chords in any key, right? Now, the really interesting thing about this, how this can work in other keys, is thinking about, okay, well, now that you see that there's really not a lot of difference between these chords, maybe you haven't paired these chords together before, because again, we're thinking of like, all right, when you first start learning chords, you got G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, maybe you play the F sharp one, and then go to G, right? Well, these are all very different shapes from each other, right? And that's kind of how you first start learning. So you don't really always necessarily pair them. I'm like, okay, well, you know, what does a G major and an E minor have in common, right? Because we don't think of the individual notes that go into those, we just think of them as shapes. Or even like, what does a B minor and a D major have in common? You know, maybe you like put it together where it's like, all right, well, if I look at just like the bottom here, well, maybe, all right, that F sharp and a D, they kind of share. But this is a much easier way, I think, to kind of make the connection between these 2 chords here, right? When you really see that like an A minor is just the 5th fret on the G, B, and E string, which again, if we were to name these notes, we'd have an A on the high E string, an E on the B string, and then a C on the G string here. So A, C, and E make up an A minor chord. And then if we just like swap that A out, remember we're going 1 string lower, now I've got a C, E, and a G, which make a C major chord, right? So that C and that E are notes that are in both chords. One note, A minor, has an A in it, C major has a G in it, right? Without having to memorize that stuff, and again, all that stuff will kind of sink in over time, you can see that, all right, well, this is a much easier representation to match those 2 together, okay? Now, in maybe like a different kind of way to talk about music theory and stuff, you'd be like, okay, well, the relationship between C major and A minor is C major's relative minor, right? A lot of times people will talk about that, like, oh, just play like a key's relative minor if you want to find, all right, you're in the key of C, C is the 8th fret on the high E string, we'll go 3 frets back, and then you can just start just knocking off those minor pentatonic riffs, because that's the relative minor of the key, right? So a lot of times relative minor is super important, because like every time you see a C major, you go back 3, A minor. I'm gonna pair those 2 together. Well, just thinking of this one shape makes it pretty easy to pair those together forever and ever in your mind, right? Just like I paired that sweet, sweet blackmail with that congressman. You'd be surprised what you get nowadays. Going right for blackmail on like a high-ranking congressman is, you know, is adjusted for inflation, obviously. So keep your smartphones handy, guys. You never know when it's gonna pay off. So the point here is, like we just talked about, C major and its relative minor, A, in a key that is not even C major. It's really the chord C major and its relative minor here, and how in any key, every major chord is going to be paired with its own relative minor chord that you can see inside of one key. You could maybe use that relationship as a gateway into another key, right? We talked about this being in the people's key, the key of G. So we haven't even really played the G. The G is right here, remember? 12th fret. Its relative minor, G major, E minor, right? A G major is a G, a B, and a D, and an E minor is a E, a G, and a B, right? They're 2/3 of each other's notes within that same chord, like I was saying. Same thing with that third pairing, if we want to look at it. B minor and D major. Again, seeing these major chords as just like different ways to get in to different spots on the fretboard is really, really valuable as far as like moving around, right? Now, one other thing that special pro tip that I've been saving towards later in the video is, instead of just taking one shape to be like, all right, well, here's A minor and its relative major C, you can actually be like, all right, remember that tip about like 3 frets back or forward is like, that's the distance between a C and an A, or an A and a C. Well, you can just do this, and like adding your pinky to the 8th fret now turns that A minor into a C major, where the root note is on top, right? So that's always an indicator that I like to use as far as like seeing where I am in the key. Any minor chord, 3 frets higher on the top, is going to give you its relative major, I guess, right? Which really is like an octave type way to get around, right? Like if I'm here, the 5th fret of the G string, and then 3 frets higher, 2 strings down, C and C, right? So you can maybe use that piece of information to beef up that chord a little bit, and instead of just having what some might consider a thinner sounding chord, only getting 3 strings on your guitar to ring out, you can add your pinky or your ring finger if you're just a beast, and then you have a bit of a fuller chord, right? And that's going to work over any of those spots, right? So A minor, C major, B minor, D major, E minor, G major. And again, this is going to work in any key. You've noticed that, like, aside from using a lower octave example to play like a G major chord or an E minor chord, we haven't really used any open strings at all, right? So an added benefit of kind of seeing this one single shape, this one piece of information, and then adding on to that with just your pinky, you're actually expanding like the scale and the notes that you could use to maybe, like I said before, inflect some of those. So instead of just thinking like, all right, 5th fret, 7th fret, we have this little scale where we have 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7. We can maybe just add this note. And in fact, I actually did a YouTube short that a lot of people ended up watching where, again, remember, all of this is in the key of G, right? The people's key. So here's a more traditional G major chord. If we think of the root note as being the 3rd fret on the low E string, or the 3rd fret on the high E string, you know, just again, a higher version of that. Anytime your key you're in is right here, you can just go to that 2 chord and that 3 chord, and the entire fret is fair game, right? So if you're just kind of like chilling in G, any combination of these notes, the 5th fret to the 7th fret, is fair game that you can use to solo. You can make kind of like almost like a cheater 2-note per string scale out of it, right? And again, like that, like I said, that's any key. You could be in the key of A flat. And again, all that stuff is really easy to see once you just kind of conceptualize, all right, well, this one single thing is going to get me all the chords, and I'm just moving around a single shape instead of maybe changing up like your shape to kind of play all the different chords and thinking you have to just memorize a bunch of different hand shapes. Again, all this stuff is great when you're first starting out because it gets you into like more kind of open chords and stuff, and you're utilizing maybe all 6 strings on the guitar to do that kind of thing. But what might even be more valuable is really learning the spacing between what one shape is going to do for you. Intervals is what we're talking here. Interval just means the space between 2 notes. So like a whole step separates A minor from B minor, or C major from D major. And then thinking like that is going to kind of make connections in your brain. Like, okay, well, since this is just a single shape, I can fluidly move between these, whether it's major chords, C, D, G, minor chords, A, B, E, or single notes that you can kind of just run around, and then maybe add the relative major. Then you can start adding pentatonic runs. Oh, there's no limit to what you can do from there. So yeah, super simple piece of information that you can really do like a lot of cool things with. Just experiment around any key. It's always going to work. Always think of like wherever your root note is, 2 frets higher is where that little run starts. Then maybe add 5. That'll get you to the minor, relative minor. Rip your pentatonic solos from there, and then just have at it. Rocking the D'Angelico Mini DC guitar today through the Supro amp, which I've been raving about the last few videos. I'll have affiliate links to both of those in the description if you guys want to help support the channel. Sign up for the Patreon if you're nasty, if you're a true G, or if you're a congressman out there who's been doing some dicey, or woman, congresswoman too. Like I said, I wasn't gonna spill any of that dirt. Sign up for the Patreon, and maybe I'll think twice about sending that manila envelope to the press. So thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.